Welcome back, squad. Coach Keto Delgado here. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Full Ride, the college recruiting podcast. And however you are listening to this episode and wherever you are listening to this episode, I just hope you are safe. I hope you are healthy and your family is doing its very best to manage, COVID-19, to manage the return of school. If you're in the workplace and you have to manage working remotely or going into the office, whatever you are facing today and on an ongoing basis, I just hope as you listen to this, all is well, truly. And I'm just so glad. I'm so grateful that you continue to tune in to Full Ride, the college recruiting podcast, every single week. And I just hope I'm able to, to really be of value and a resource to our families out there, particularly to my student athletes who are trying to take their game to a next level and play sports in college. If this is your first time checking out Full Ride, well, let me just welcome you to the squad, right? Every single Thursday, it is the mission of Full Ride to educate our families on the ins and outs of college recruiting, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a hard process. It's a long process. At times, it can be frustrating. At times, it can be overwhelming. And I can only imagine for many of you going through it right now, how overwhelming it can be, how anxious you can be, particularly if you live in a state where, they're not allowing you to play fall sports. It's being delayed till the spring. There's just so many moving parts right now. So I truly am thinking and praying for all my families that, it will all work out in your favor. So if this is your first time checking us out, like I said, welcome to the squad. I hope it's not your last, and I encourage you to come back every single Thursday because we do have new episodes every Thursday. You can listen to Full Ride on your favorite podcast app. You can also visit our company webpage because we are sponsored, aka powered by You Recruit You. So you can visit, I should say, yourecruityou.com. That's yourecruityou.com to learn more about, our mission to educate, equip, and empower our student athletes to take control of their college recruiting process. So for all my families who have been, with Full Ride from day one, since COVID-19 started, I've had guests on probably at least 20 to 30 straight episodes. And it's been fun, right? I've got a great opportunity to interview former college athletes, former college coaches, personal trainers who have worked in college athletics. But my point is, it's been awesome really interviewing former college athletes and getting their perspective on college recruiting, letting them share their stories, letting them, provide you with some advice that's going to help you take control of your college recruiting process. And I did it for so long that, now that people are returning to school, now that, there are student athletes in high school who are able to play fall sports, depending on the state you live in, I really wanted to start to, to dig in on, some best practices. So I wanted to put a pause on interviewing former college athletes and go back more towards a solo, more teaching model for the Full Ride podcast. And don't get me wrong, we're definitely going to still have guests in the future, but over the next few weeks at least, it's just going to be really yours truly. And I'm just going to try to, to really, dig deeper on certain topics. So I really want to encourage. I want to hear from you. I want to know what I should cover. Right. So I really want you guys to kind of help me produce the show. Right. So what I need you to do is email me, Coach Kito, Coach Kito at gmail.com, and submit your questions, submit show ideas, because I'd be happy to use this time to answer those questions. But also, if there's a certain topic that you want me to drill down on, well, let's use this time to do it. All right. So I definitely want to do that. And if you are, just a quick side note, I'm also streaming this on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you probably see some of my daughter's artwork in the background. Um, and I should actually, let me show you guys real quick. I'm gonna do it for my audience so you can see. That's my daughter's uh, classroom to my right. Right. So my daughter, she's in first grade, and she's doing remote learning right now. So I'm sharing my home office slash studio with my daughter. It's her first grade class. So if you want to check, you want to see what it looks like, just search You Recruit You on YouTube. You can also just find us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook too. Just look up You Recruit You. But the point is, we're all kind of going through a number of things, right? And we all have questions. We all have concerns. Some of you may be really anxious. So I just really want you to use, Full Ride as your go-to resource as it relates to college recruiting. So please, I encourage you, email me with your questions. Send me a DM. It's You Recruit You on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook, and I'll try to cover it on the podcast every week. So for today, what I want to do is get to the basics, right? And so many families think their son or daughter should be recruited athletes, and unfortunately, in some situations, they aren't, right? And if I were to ask you right now, well, why isn't your son, or why isn't your daughter being recruited? I'd probably say many of you would immediately, blame COVID-19 on as to why your son or daughter isn't being recruited. And don't get me wrong, it could definitely have a hand in it. But what I do want to make sure we don't make the mistake of thinking that there aren't other factors that may be playing a bigger role that is preventing your son or daughter from becoming recruited athletes. Right? One of my favorite sayings is, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. Right? And what I mean by this is, many of you are making some mistakes that you aren't even aware of. And maybe not even a mistake. You're just unfamiliar with how college recruiting works. So you may have these assumptions about the process, and you're like, well, how come my son or daughter isn't being recruited when they made all area, they're an all-star, they lead our team in scoring, or they have the most touchdowns. So you may get caught up in a number of things that aren't in your best interest to even give a second thought to, right? So I'm gonna try to get to as many as I can today. If I don't get to all of them, then we'll have a part 2 series. But I really want to lock in on, why isn't your son or daughter being recruited by college coaches? What are some of the reasons, right? What are some of the reasons why your son or daughter is not being recruited? And I have a list here that I wrote down. I'm gonna get to them as many as I can in the next 20 minutes or so. And if I don't get to it this episode, we'll do a part 2. But I definitely want to get to 3 today. So number 1, you're too early, right? You're too early, to the party, if you will. You ever go to, for my parents, when you're in college, you go to these different parties, or even as you get older, it's unless it's a surprise party, that's different. You got to be early, because you don't want to. You're not the star. If it's a surprise birthday party, you got to make sure you show up early. But normally, if it's a barbecue, if it's a party type thing, you never want to be the first one there, right? You never want to show up too early because you're just standing around. They're like, geez, when is everybody else going to show up? And it's funny growing up, a barbecue would start at 2 o'clock, and my dad is I love him to death, but he was the worst because he's a big believer in if you're not early, you're late. So we'd show up like 15 minutes before the barbecue even started. We'd just be sitting around, and then we end up helping the people throwing the barbecue, helping them finish that up because we arrived so early. But so don't get me wrong, showing up early is important. But as it relates to college recruiting, many of you are showing up to the party too early, meaning you think that because you are in high school, you should automatically be getting recruited, right? You see on Instagram or you see on Twitter, these big time recruits getting offered as 8th graders, as 9th graders, as obviously 10th graders. And many of you just make that assumption that that's how it's supposed to be. In reality, most recruits, they don't get recruited until like the start of their junior year, because technically that's when coaches can reach out to you and call you and have that kind of communication. They may be able to send letters beforehand, but as far as actually making direct contact with you, in most instances, it doesn't happen until the start of your junior year. So I think it's important. The reason why, so this isn't so much a mistake that you're making. I just want you to be aware of it. And the reason why I say this is because college recruiting is a marathon. It's a marathon. It's a sprint. I mean, it's not a sprint. It's a long and at times grueling process filled with many macro or micro steps, meaning small steps along the way. And what I think the reason why I want you guys to know that is because as you guys go into this process, particularly if you're a freshman or a sophomore right now, I don't want you to get so caught up saying, well, I'm not getting any letters. Coaches aren't calling me, because what ends up happening is that can be frustrating. It can lead to, anxiety, and you may even start questioning if you're good or not to play. And I don't want you to even think about that right now, right? If you're a freshman, if you're a sophomore, the reason why you're not getting recruited right now, in most likely, is because it's just too early. So don't focus on that right now. Don't focus on coaches contacting you. Don't focus on you contacting coaches. It's too early, right? So that's number one why you're not getting recruited. Many of you are starting. You guys are starting this process way too soon. With that said, it's going to tie into my next point. Number 2. Many of you are making a bad first impression, right? You're making a bad first impression. And when I say you're making a bad first impression, what I'm talking about is your grades. Okay? Your grades is your grades aren't doing you any favors. So you said earlier, you may be asking, what does leaving a bad impression, first impression, have to do with starting the process too early? Because what I mean by this is when you start the process too early, recruiting, in my opinion, is not just coaches reaching out to you, you reaching out to coaches. That's one element of college recruiting. Another element of college recruiting is your eligibility. So yes, I don't think for many of you, you should be reaching out to college coaches until the end of your sophomore year, start of your junior year, but you should be focusing on the college recruiting process starting your freshman year of high school. However, what I mean by focusing on college recruiting your freshman year, I'm talking about eligibility. You should be focusing on eligibility, learning the process. What are core classes? What's the SAT sliding scale? How do I make sure that I'm taking the right core classes? How do I calculate my GPA? learning the recruiting terms, learning the recruiting calendar, right? Learning the rules, right? That's what you should be doing your freshman, your sophomore year, learning the basics of college recruiting, right? And what I'm saying is by you're not leaving and coaches with good first impressions is because you're clearly dropping the ball, students, when it comes to your grades, right? Because maybe a coach sees your huddle film, maybe they see your YouTube, maybe they see you at a tournament, right? You're a junior, you're a sophomore, whatever it is, you're a junior. Let's just say you're a junior, right? And based off of your game film, based off of your performance that particular weekend in a tournament, whatever the case may be, they like you and they have an interest in learning more about you. Well, I can just tell you as a former college athlete and as a coach now who helps hundreds of student athletes every year navigate this process, and in speaking to a number of current and former college coaches, one of the first things, once they identify you as a potential recruit, you go on down the line. One of the first questions coaches ask is, how are your grades? What's your GPA? Send me a copy of your transcript. And when you tell them verbally or send them a copy of your transcript, if it's not up to par, that's what I mean by you are leaving a bad first impression with college coaches. All right, you have one shot to make a good first impression. You've all heard that saying, right? Well, it works the same way in college recruiting, right? So you're not getting recruited. You may be, I should say, a student who's not getting recruited because they see your film, and then when they ask you for your transcript, it's not up to par, and they know they're not going to be able to get you into their school, and they move on. It's literally that simple. I mean, it's cold-blooded, cold-hearted, for you J. Cole fans, some of my student athletes listening, cold world. Like, that's just the way it is. Cold world, no blankets. That's just facts, right? It's almost like, for my parents, I'll give you an analogy. It's a credit score, right? Your student athlete's transcript is a lot like our credit score. The better your credit, right? And by no means am I trying to go make this a financial show, but I'm trying to relate to you guys, my parents who are listening. But at the end of the day, you try to buy a house, you try to get a car, whatever, you're trying to get a line of credit if you're a business owner. What do? They run your credit score, right? And the better your credit, the more likelihood of you, being approved to buy a home, to get that car, whatever the case may be, right? Same thing with your son or daughter. The athletic department, the college coach, they say, okay, this person has potential skill-wise. Nice. Okay. I want to learn more about him or her. And they're going to ask for that. They're going to ask for that credit score, the AKA transcript. And if you're a junior and they look at your freshman year, they look at your sophomore year, and you're at a 2.0 GPA, a 2.2 GPA, look at your SAT score and it's way below where it needs to be, you're not leaving a good first impression. And in that moment, they literally have to make a decision. They have to make a decision. Do we keep recruiting this person who is subpar in the classroom, or do we just move on to somebody else who is just as talented but has better grades? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to move on. They're going to move on unless your skill is just through the roof. Then, they may stay in the game a little bit longer. But for most of you, no, I should say us, because I was one of those student athletes. Most of us, our talent level isn't to that level. We're not that elite. We don't have that margin of error. We don't have that room for error. So we have to be elite in the classroom and be exceptional, athletically. So those are the first two big reasons why I think many of you aren't being recruited. You're starting a process way too early. So, right, you hear that? If you're a freshman, you're a sophomore, you're not getting recruited, please, pump the brakes. And then I want to dovetail into the next point, which is make sure you do everything possible to get that foundation. And what you want to do is make sure you have good grades. Because I've worked with families. I mean, I can literally, I will never do it to these students because I don't want to embarrass them. But literally, I've worked with student athletes. They get a text from a coach introducing themselves to them. Hi, so-and-so. This is Coach so-and-so from, ABC school. I love to get to know you a little bit more based on your highlight film. Can you send me a copy of your transcript? I mean, first question out their mouth. What's your GPA? Can you send me a copy of the transcript? And I've had student athletes, they send the transcript and then never hear from the coach again. Never hear from them again. It's because I tell them, well, you know why they're not calling you back, right? You're right. My GPA is too low. Boom. Right. So that's number 2. Number 3, you're waiting for your high school coach to do the work for you. Right. I think this is the big mistake a lot of you are making. It's a big assumption you guys are making. And I think it's a big mistake. I know it's a big mistake for the majority of you, right? There's always going to be some college coaches and, some travel team, AAU coaches. Sure, they have the hookups, they have the connections, they have the experience. For every 10 student athletes, you may have 3 of those types of coaches. But for the most of you, you play for a coach, who's really not in the position to help you a whole lot when it comes to college recruiting. So for you to be sitting back, waiting, assuming your college coach is going to do the work for you is a grave mistake. And it's one of the reasons why you're not being recruited. You have to care more about this process than anybody else. So you really should not be sitting back and expecting and hoping that your coach is going to reach out to these college coaches on your behalf. You got to do that work yourself. So number 3, you're not getting recruited because you're sitting back and waiting on your high school coach or your travel league coach to do the work for you. That's a big mistake, huge mistake, right? So if you take nothing else away from this, don't fall victim to that mistake, to that myth that it's the job of your coach to do that, to do the work for you, right? It's not your coach's job. If you get help from them, you play for a powerhouse and your coach maybe is a former college athlete, or they've had a number of former student athletes who went on to college, so now they're used to they're used to college recruiting, they're familiar with the process, and they're able to and willing to help you. Fine, count your blessings. Just don't expect it, okay? But that's the reason why you're not getting recruited. You're making that assumption, right? And what I'll leave you with this week, these are the top. I think these are like my top 5. Well, actually, I'll give you 2 more, and then I'll wrap it up. This is not going to be a 2-part series. I can kind of wrap it all up, and the next 2 it'll be 6 reasons why you're not being recruited. Number 5, you signed up for one of those, and I'm not going to say the name of the service because there are a bunch of services, but there was one in particular, a 4-letter word. It starts with an N, ends in an A. That's all I'll say. But you signed up for one of these recruiting services. You create a little profile on it. and you think coaches are just going to find you. That's why you're not getting recruited, because most college coaches are on these types of platforms. They just aren't. Um, I don't know what else to say, like, because I don't want to come off as someone who's a hater or I'm bashing these programs, but these recruiting services that tell you to set up a free account, is that's not how it works. So I just want to encourage you that if you're going to use those services, fine, but at the end of the day, you have to be proactive. I've said this a million times. I'm a broken record, but you have to be proactive. So what I would say, instead of, and I would say this is like 5B, right? You're using one of those free recruiting services. But the 5B to that is, you're not leveraging, the resources that are available to you, the free resources that are available to you, right? Instagram, Twitter, Huddle, YouTube, email, the internet, your phone. These are all free resources you have at your disposal that allow you to market yourself and reach out to college coaches. There's no reason for you to just throw your information up on this recruiting services website. They're a platform, and wait for coaches to contact you through that platform. Makes no sense at all, in my opinion. You have to proactively build your own platform, right? So the reason why you're not being recruited is, like I said, a number of reasons, but one of them is probably you've put your profile on one of those recruiting services and you think the coach is going to find you on those recruiting services. Not happening for most of you. So instead, the solution I want to encourage you to use is take advantage of other free resources. Like I said, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Create your own website and then reach out to coaches on your own. But the reason why we named our company You Recruit You is because recruiting starts with you. College recruiting starts and ends with you, right? So the last thing you should be doing is to rely on someone else's platform to get discovered when you have all these other tools at your disposal, right? Social media, and I said this a million times before, but social media and the internet has literally shrunk the world. It's shrunk the world. You have so much information at your fingertips. You have coaches' email addresses, you have coaches' phone numbers, you can follow them on Twitter, you can send them direct messages, you can promote yourself on YouTube, you can promote yourself on Huddle, you can promote yourself on Instagram. Why would you ever sign up for a platform, let it sit there, and assume coaches is going to find you on that platform? And that's one of the reasons why you're not being recruited, right? And then the last one, I can honestly keep going, but I'm just trying to give you guys the big ones, in my opinion. You're closed-minded, right? You're closed-minded. So many of you, what I mean by that is you're not being recruited because you have a D1 or bust mentality, right? So you may have a number of D2, a number of D3, NAIA, JUCOs. You may have all these schools reaching out to you, trying to recruit you, trying to get to know you, and you're ignoring them because they're not D1. So in your mind, you're not being recruited. But in actuality, you could potentially be being recruited, but you're just not open-minded. And as a result, you're like, well, where are the coaches at? So like last time I said, I had, 5A, 5B. I'll give you a 6A, 6B. So 6A is you're not open-minded to other opportunities. But now I'm going to hit you right between the eyes. And I'm sorry if you don't like this is harsh, but 6B is you're not good enough. Ooh. Ooh. Just saying that hurts. That hurts. It does hurt because, I'm a cheerleader at heart. At the end of the day, like I'm rooting for all of my student athletes. I want all of you to go to your dream school, have it all paid for. You go there, you're a 4-year starter, right? And I don't care where it is, D1, D3, D2, I don't care. Whatever your dream school is, whatever you imagine your college experience to be like I'm rooting for you. I want that for you. And it's honestly a possibility. But going back to 6A, you're not open-minded, and then you're tied into 6B, you're not good enough. So if you're not open-minded to all opportunities, and then you're not good enough for Division I, and all you're looking for is D1 opportunities, well, guess what? That's just a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for, rejection, disappointment. If you are a D2, D3 type talent who is only open to D1 opportunities, you are literally fueling your disappointment because you're not going to get what you what you ultimately want. So if you ultimately want just to go D1, you're going to be disappointed. But if you ultimately want an opportunity to get a good education, to play the sport you love in college, to move away from home, experience new experiences, to network and meet new people, to compete, playing the sport you love, if that's what you want, then that's what you should be going into the recruiting process with, that type of mentality. But too many of you, you're closed-minded. It's D1 or bust. And then when you combine that with you're not good enough for D1, that's going to be the reason why you're not being recruited, because you're closed-minded to other opportunities. But those are the reasons. And I want it. And again, in future episodes, we're going to go more into strategy. But again, I'm a big believer in, avoiding big mistakes. So again, you're starting too early, meaning you're trying to email coaches, call coaches. You want them to call you as a freshman, as a sophomore. Pump your brakes, right? Instead, use that time to build a foundation of understanding, right? Learn recruiting terms, learn the eligibility requirements, but don't start this process of reaching out to coaches too early, right? 2, you're leaving a bad first impression, meaning your grades aren't on point, right? 3, you signed up for a recruiting service and you think the coach is going to find you. 4, you're waiting for your coach, your high school coach, to do the work for you. You're not leveraging your tools, your free tools at your disposal. Right? You're not leveraging social media. Right? And then, of course, you're closed-minded. You're closed-minded to all opportunities in your game. You're not good enough. Now, I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear here. I'm not saying you're not good enough to play in college. I'm saying you may not be good enough to play at the level that you want to play at in college. Right? Maybe you're a D3 talent, but you're only reaching out to D2 schools. And then even within every division, There's different schools. So there's like Division II powerhouses that you want to play at, but you can't play at those schools. Maybe you got to go to another conference at the Division II level. So you got to find out where you fit in talent-wise. Right? And then the last one I'll just go with, I mean, I've said a bunch, but I'll end it with this one is, I mean, you're just not being proactive enough. Right? And I've touched on this many times in the past, but you're not being proactive. If you are a junior right now or a senior, you need to pick up the phone and call college coaches. All right? Call them and introduce yourself to them. But many of you are being way too passive. You're sitting back and you're just hoping they're going to discover you. Most of these coaches are not going to just discover you. And that's why you're not being recruited, because you're not being proactive enough. And the reason why you're not being proactive enough is to a bigger reason. I don't know how many of you truly believe that you deserve to play at the next level. Right? Like picking up the phone, and you may be nervous and you may, stumble over your words a little bit to start because it's new to you. But you should, if you put in the work, if you have good grades, if you have good character, if you're a good teammate, if you bust your butt to get better every single day, well, then you need to pick up the phone and call these coaches because you've earned the right to call them. You've earned it. And that's what I need you guys to understand. Right? There's a difference between, being too cocky and arrogant and fighting what you deserve, fighting for what you deserve. Right? Many of you you play for a small school. You play for a bad team. You play for a high school coach who's never had to recruit athletes. Your mom and dad, they never played in college, so they don't understand the college recruiting process. So you're fighting an uphill battle, right? You're fighting an uphill battle. It's tough, right? And as a result, you have to take matters into your own hands. And I'm telling you, the reason why many of you aren't willing to go that extra distance and to take control of this process, take matters into your own hands, because I think psychologically, in the back of your mind, you may be wondering, you may be casting doubt on, do I deserve to play in college? And I'm telling you right now, yes, you do. You deserve it. You've earned it. And now you have to fight for it. And I want you to envision yourself playing at the next level. I want you to like imagine it, running through the tunnel if you play football, whatever the sport is. Imagine practicing. Imagine getting dressed for game day. Imagine performing at a high level at the next level. Imagine playing in front of crowds. Imagine the opportunities of going to college and networking and getting a higher education, experiencing new opportunities. You got to imagine it. You got to see it. And I want you to envision that, because you envision all that and you picture it. And then you think about all the hard work that you've put in to put yourself in that opportunity to hopefully earn a scholarship or to earn or to play at the next level. And when you combine all that together, you're like, well, why wouldn't I call a college coach? Of course I should call this college coach, because I've earned it. I've earned it. I deserve this opportunity. And I think subconsciously, many of you are just sitting back because maybe you are questioning If you've earned it, oh, I'm bothering this coach. I don't want to bother this coach. No, call him and say, I think I'd be a great fit for your program. And I'd like to learn more about your program. I want you to learn more about me because this is what I bring to the table. I bring a 3.6 GPA. I bring leadership. I bring a strong work ethic. I bring energy. Right? So I just really want you guys to, in closing here, I think many of you, the reason why you're not getting recruited, because again, tying it back to my initial point, is you're not being proactive enough. But why aren't you being proactive enough? I'm just really curious on how many of you really truly believe you deserve it, that you're worthy of it. You are worthy of it. You know if you're putting in that work. You know it to your core. And if you know you're getting up early, you're working out, you're staying, or you're going to bed late, work, whatever it is, you know deep down if you're putting in the work. If you're putting in that work, well, gosh darn it, like you got to take that next step and you got to be proactive and you got to call these coaches. Leave nothing to chance. Leave nothing to chance. All right. So this is the longest, like I said, this is the first time I've done a solo episode in a while. I had to kick the rust off a little bit. I had, so it's been fun. I really hope you guys, you found value in this episode. And again, I really want to encourage you. I really want I want to make these episodes as valuable as possible for you. So, please, if you have any show ideas, any topics, any questions you want me to review during the show, just email me, Coach, KITO @gmail.com, or send us a direct message on social media. You can find us at You Recruit You. That's you, the letter U, recruit, the letter U, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And you can also search You Recruit You on YouTube if you like. Go to our website, yourecruityou.com. And last but not least, you can sign up for our newsletter. Just text the word playbook to 66866. Text playbook to 66866. But I want to hear from you. I want to make this as useful as possible to you. But until next time, this is Coach Quito Delgado reminding you that college recruiting starts with you. What steps are you taking today to earn a scholarship tomorrow?